Well, let's do a dangerous game. We talked about this a bit last week because it opened in Scotland last Friday. It's opening in the rest of the UK today. It's the sequel to Anthony Baxter's film You've Been Trumped, which was about Donald Trump's building a golf course in Aberdeenshire and the way in which he rode roughshod over the people that lived in the area upon which he was building. This basically is a follow-up, and it expands the movie out. It looks at similar cases in places like Dubrovnik, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, in which there's a building of a golf course which is investigated, and it's looked at the way in which the politicians do or don't deal with what's going on. Meanwhile, Anthony Baxter himself, on the one hand, looks back towards what golf used to be about and the way in which golf was actually a kind of working class sport, and speaks to relatives of his who play 3-pounder throw matches, and there's this wonderful gentleman who spends his spare time collecting lost golf balls on golf courses and then taking them to Oxfam and raising huge amounts of money by doing this, incidentally. But the thing that he manages to do, and also he talks to people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about the ecological impact in this, but the thing he finally manages to do is he finally manages to get an interview with Donald Trump, who flannels and filibusters but does at least talk to him. Here's a clip.
Mr. Trump, you've made legal threats against the BBC when they showed the film, and you said it was defamatory.
Well, I thought it was. I mean, I thought that the tone of it was so one-sided. And one of the reasons I've agreed to do the interview is that there was nobody to speak up for our side. I mean, you only ask negative questions, and you only speak to the 2 or 3 people that were opposed to it.
You wouldn't let us speak to you. The police wouldn't let us speak to them. And
Only because, well, the police you'll have to deal with, but the police obviously had a good reason for doing to you what they did.
But you've been accused of using the force.
I never spoke to the police.
The Grampian force,
Anthony,
is your own private security force.
I never spoke to the police about you. Nobody from our side was asked for an opinion or gave an opinion, whether they were asked or not.
They were, Mr. Trump.
But I'm sure it wouldn't have been put in. And I'm sure even my answers will be cut short and will be highly inaccurate. That's why I have a camera watching us, because I want that for, obviously, for certain reasons.
So he finally gets to talk to Trump. I mean, well, you can hear from that, what Trump does is just sort of deny everything. But at least he does finally talk to him.
That's a bristling interview, though.
Yes, it is a bristling interview. And I mean, it's fascinating because if you've followed this story, and I mean, we played, sorry to keep coming back to islands because I'm in the Isle of Man at the moment, in the Isle of Man Film Festival. We played You've Been Trumped at the Shetland Film Festival a couple of years ago, and that was the first time Bill Forsyth saw it. And of course, one of the things Anthony Baxter did was to use sequences from Local Hero to kind of draw this comparison between the story of Local Hero, which to some extent is based on what happened in Shetland, and the story of what had happened with Donald Trump coming in with all this money and deciding that he wanted to take a place of extraordinary natural beauty and do something with it. And Bill Forsyth saw the film there, and Bill Forsyth loved You've Been Trumped, but he said in terms of in his film, when he made Local Hero, he said nobody could have made up a villain like Donald Trump, and if you made him up as a fictional villain, you wouldn't believe him. Well, at least in this he gets to talk, which incidentally has to be said is more than some of the politicians to whom Anthony Baxter wants to speak do. So whatever else you think about Trump, at least he agrees to speak to him. Although what he says is the reason he agrees to speak to him is because now he's been on the BBC and now he's important. And if you remember when this all started, the thing that raised Anthony Baxter's profile more than anything else was Donald Trump taking to his Twitter account to tell his millions of followers what an idiot Anthony Baxter was, rather than thinking, if I just don't say anything about it, those millions of people probably won't know. So it's an interesting ongoing David and Goliath battle. I mean, I think, as I said last week, I think it lacks the intimate focus of the first film, which is very, very specifically about people like Michael Forbes against what's happening. But what it does do is it broadens it out, and it looks at it in a much more, it looks at the whole ecological issue in a much more kind of global fashion, and it does lead up to Anthony Baxter finally gets to meet Donald Trump, and Donald Trump finally talks to him because now he's been on the BBC. So that means he must be worth talking to.
Do you remember that Michael Moore film where he finally gets to meet the guy from Ford Motors?
Roger and Me.
Roger and Me. Does it have any kind of sense of similarity to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a comparison that has been made. I mean, obviously more so in terms of the first one, because, I mean, there are moments in the first one when he kind of shouts questions at Donald Trump as they're sort of following him around on golf courses and things, desperately trying to get his questions answered by him. But there's a weird thing that you kind of almost think that if he gets to the point of speaking to Donald Trump, somehow the magic's going to go and they're all going to... they'll find out they like each other. No, that doesn't happen at all. So it's interesting that Trump finally decided to speak to him.